The NBA has like a very, very legitimate problem. So the other night on Playback TV, we were watching game one of the Boston Celtics Indiana Pacers opener for the conference finals. Really dawned on me how bad the Eastern Conference is.
No! Oh my goodness!
This team sucks! There's been an ongoing conversation throughout the entire NBA season, but we're now at the end of the playoffs, one round away from the NBA Finals, and boy, is it just obvious. The Boston Celtics open up with a 12-0 run. They take the lead, go up big, double digits in the first, 2 to 3 minutes. It's actually pretty crazy. Then after that, they proceed to blow the lead around the 6-minute mark in the second quarter, basically heading into the end of the half. The Indiana Pacers go on a 20-14 run and eventually take the lead at the top of the third quarter. Then the Celtics go on a run, roughly around like a 6-minute run in the third quarter where they go on a 26-11 run. So another massive lead. But then Indiana goes on another run again. So around like 4:14 the third quarter, all the way to 2 minutes left in regulation, Indiana goes on a 36-20 run. In that span of time, the Celtics are just abysmal. They're shooting 36% from the field, 2 for 9 from behind the arc. In particular, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they go a whopping 2 for 9 from the field within this time frame. The Pacers have the lead with only 2 minutes left to go, and then the Pacers essentially just choke away the game. It's just ridiculous. Tatum goes up, misses a wide open 3. Hallie gets the ball, but then dribbles off his leg. Then Derek White misses a layup. Then Tatum gets the rebound. He misses a fader. Then the Pacers get the ball, get fouled. Then they're inbounding it now. And for whatever reason, Siakam just can't gather the ball. And that's another turnover. And then eventually Jaylen Brown gets a corner 3 that ties the game. The Pacers essentially gave Boston not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 opportunities to tie the game, in which they capitalize on. Boston then pushes to the OT, and OT Boston wins, and Halliburton has a really, really bad turnover that kind of caps off the victory for Boston in game 1. This is a series in which I do have Boston winning. I don't want to ever, make it seem like it's not that way as I go throughout this video, but I want to also be clear, Boston should be winning these games convincingly. They are far away the most superior team in the conference, and statistically speaking, they are far away the most superior team in the entire league. But the simple fact that we are talking about a nail-biter in game 1 against the Indiana Pacers team that has the worst defense in the playoffs is ridiculous, especially when you take into consideration that the Boston Celtics have not 1, but 2 all-league defensive guards that should be able to cut off a lot of what Tyrese Halliburton is doing in this series, as he really leverages his ability to create open looks for the rest of his teammates. And yet, for whatever reason, I don't know. On one hand, I'm actually happy because the Boston Celtics are such an unserious team that they can actually turn this into a legitimate series. But on the other hand, it actually does concern me, and it kind of brings up an ongoing conversation, and that is, how weak is the Eastern Conference, and should we take any of this serious? In my humble opinion, I don't think so. So you may be wondering yourself, Lo, how weak is the Eastern Conference? Well, lucky for you, I actually decided to go out my way to do some research instead of just spitballing like I normally do and a lot of other people do on this platform. Now, first, in the Eastern Conference itself, as we all know, there was only one team that was able to record over 50 wins this year, that being the Boston Celtics. The other team that was able to at least cap to 50 wins were the New York Knicks, and they got right at 50 wins at the end of the season. To put that into context, in the Western Conference, there were 5 50-win teams, and in particular, the 7th-seeded New Orleans Pelicans had a 49-win record this year, meaning that the 7th seed in the Western Conference would actually be competing with the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. Now, to be fair to the Eastern Conference, if you look at the standings, in the Eastern Conference, 7th seed Philadelphia 76ers, 47 wins, not that big of a difference from the Pelicans, 49 wins, only a 2-win difference, right? So maybe I'm just harping on it a little bit too much. However, I do believe a much better indicator on the difference of greatness between the two conferences is the fact that the Western Conference had 11 teams that finished with a 500 record or better, in contrast to the East, who only had 8 teams. Also, the fact that the Eastern Conference had not 1, not 2, but 3 teams in the conference that finished with 21 wins or fewer, while out West, there's only 1 team that finished with 21 wins. I think that's also a great indicator. But in a much bigger picture here is trying to get a better understanding of just the overall win percentage in the Eastern Conference this year. And this year in the Eastern Conference, the win percentage was only 47.2. To put that into context, dating back to 1970, having a win percentage of only 47.2 means that this is one of the bottom 15 worst conferences within that time frame if you just look at win percentage. And when you look at the list of teams that are in that same ballpark, you do start to see a pretty consistent theme here, and that is A, a lot of these teams are Eastern Conference teams, but B, and more importantly, half of this list is all Eastern Conference that all has happened within the last 24 to 25 years. And a lot of these are Eastern conferences that have happened post 2010, which is very, very telling, but honestly not that surprising at all. Over the last couple of years, it seems as if like the balance was brought back, but no, it's going back in the opposite direction. Now we can all hypothesize on why exactly this happens. I personally believe that the standard in the Eastern Conference has become so low, and they've been accustomed to such a low standard for now 25 to going on 30 years. It has now brought upon itself a level of complacency and honestly mediocre team building, because a lot of teams just feel like they are content, or they feel like they're moving in the right direction because they make a conference finals appearance, which is a conversation that many people are having. I think Draymond touched upon this on his podcast. This is something that I talked about in Historic Precedents as well. It's why you can't just go out and label someone great because they made the finals when you play in a significantly weaker conference. But nevertheless, the point that I'm trying to make is that undeniably that not only has the Eastern Conference been a really bad conference for a very, very long time, but in particular, this year is really bad. Bottom 15 conference in the last, 50 some years kind of speaks for itself. And then you take into consideration the mounting amount of injuries that have occurred so far in the postseason with a lot of these playoff teams. Porzingis is out for the Boston Celtics. It felt like half of the Knicks roster wasn't available to play. Giannis was unavailable to play before the playoff even began, and then Dame also dealt with injuries in the middle of the first round. The Cleveland Cavaliers were without Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell by the end of their series. The Philadelphia 76ers had Joel Embiid playing with one leg, and then Miami didn't have Jimmy Butler. So nevertheless, because I feel like I'm definitely talking over a much bigger picture here, all of this is kind of encompassing why I just cannot take this postseason run serious, is because these are teams that I genuinely don't believe are true playoff teams. That does not necessarily mean that they're bad. Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you want to look at it. But I do feel like that a postseason run or making a conference finals appearance or even being able to make the finals should not be indicative on how good some of these teams are, in large part because when you watch them play, especially the Boston Celtics, when I watch them with a keen eye, it's very clear that they have massive flaws. And then I go look at a Western Conference series against the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. I watched game one of that just tonight, and the level of execution, what it actually takes to be a really good ball club, how to close games accordingly, it's just completely different. It's night and day. Bro, I'm watching Boston and they're making mistakes that if the Indiana Pacers are able to exploit, I don't know what you're going to do if you have to go up against Minnesota and certainly Dallas. Why is it that the Boston Celtics constantly switch all the time? They just leave Al Horford to hang and dry by himself every single night. It does not make any sense. The level of three-point shooting that they take, at least volume-wise, that never makes any sense to me. They settle constantly. Mind you, this is a Pacers team that has practically no interior presence outside of Miles Turner, but when he's not on the floor, it's null and void. And more importantly, a lot of the questions and concerns that people have for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown continue to be ongoing concerns, just because, again, we watch the games and we see that they have an inability to deal with double teams, to make the proper decision, to make certain reads, to give to open players and teammates so they can knock down their shots, to have a fluid offense, etc., etc., etc. The point is this, though, and I feel like a lot of Boston fans are upset, a lot of people, for not respecting the Boston Celtics, right? I want to be clear here. I'm a Laker fan, so of course I'm going to hate. But in a more serious tone here, the reason why it's really hard to is because, as gimmicky as it sounds, they're not really battle tested. A lot of the things that they struggle with today, they struggled with the year before that and the year before that. It's the reason why when they went to the NBA Finals, though they were the more talented team, I knew that they were going to lose just simply off of the fact that they weren't going to execute accordingly. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that I personally believe that Boston, in the beginning phases of the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown era, instead of allowing them to go through growing pains and figure things out and have a lot of reps of ball handling and decision making, they decided to force a bunch of veteran guards, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, even allow Marcus Smart to handle the offense a little bit more. And that really took away a lot of the growth and maturity that we should have seen in their offensive game. But because of this, it's the reason why many people hesitate to give this team credit, even though statistically speaking, in almost every regard, they should be dominating the entire league. It should be undeniable that the Celtics should win a championship. And I'm not even saying that they won't be able to do so, because who knows, there is a possibility that they will be able to. But when you look at this conference, when you look at what they're accomplishing, it's not that impressive because they're not playing any really good, talented, competitive teams in the East. The Indiana Pacers or the New York Knicks were going to get to the conference finals just because somebody had to make it to the conference finals. It turned out to be Indiana. Sure, I think the Pacers have a game or two within them. They can really make things competitive, but it's how they are able to make things competitive that will be very interesting to continue to watch. And I do believe inevitably it will be the demise of the Boston Celtics, that they really have not been challenged until the Western Conference. Now, a lot of people are going to sit here and say, low, oh, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're never going to get the credit. If they beat teams by a wide margin, then you're going to sit here and say, oh, they're not battle tested. But then when they go up against teams in a close game, you're going to be like, oh, why didn't you blow them out? You can't win. Because I've seen that argument as well. I want to be very, very clear. It's not necessarily how many points they win by, it's how they win or how they lose games. Going on a 12-0 run, then blowing that 12-0 run, then going on a 26-11 run, then blowing that run again, essentially within a quarter and a half's time. And in the process of blowing a 13-point lead, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum go 2 for 9, shooting a bunch of threes. The entire team go 36% from the field, 2 for 9 from behind the arc, again, shooting and chucking up a bunch of threes. That's the reason why people feel like they are not to be taken serious. It's how they play games. It's how they lose games. It's how they even win games. Because even in this game, in game 1 of this series, they should have lost. Any other competent team, you would have lost that game, and you would have lost it in the exact same fashion that you tend to lose games in, and that's by poor shot selection, bad switching, not communicating, lack of execution, and just, in all honesty, not taking advantage of some of the physical traits that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum has. Jrue Holiday shot really, really well. Who knows if that's going to continue to happen? Al Horford shot pretty bad. Who knows how often that's going to happen as well? But at the end of the day, if Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and the defensive scheme that should be much more competent than what it actually is, if it continues to fail this team, inevitably when they actually match up with a genuine team, they're going to get knocked out of the playoffs, regardless if that's now or in the NBA Finals. And when that does happen, I'm sorry to all the Boston Celtics fans out there, I'm not going to be able to take that run serious, because when you look at the entire conference that was dealing with injuries, and yes, I know, Porzingis, he's not healthy, but you shouldn't really need him to get through this conference anyway. But when you look at the amount of injuries, when you look at the lack of winning in this conference, when you look at the lack of execution in this conference as well, bottom 10 offenses this year, 7 of them were in the Eastern Conference. Bottom 10 defenses this year, 7 of them were in the Eastern Conference as well. So there's that. So sorry, Boston fans, I just don't believe you. Sure, that could be my Lakerdom talking. Who knows? I don't know. But I also believe there are some legitimate concerns that a lot of people are trying to highlight. People are going to gas this run up just because you made the conference finals or you made the NBA finals, but that shouldn't be the case at all. Indiana, don't be dumb. Don't think that because you got to the conference finals that you're just, we're just one piece away and we can really compete, because that's not how that goes. I've seen too many teams in the Eastern Conference over the past couple of years fall for the same trap every single year. And in all honesty, I believe that's the biggest reason why the conferences have been so lopsided for, again, effectively the last 20, 25 years now. You have a team that makes a deep postseason run, regardless if it's in the conference finals and the NBA finals, and they convince themselves like, ooh, we're actually competing, when they're actually not. So when you have a team that's now trying to commit to a roster that really and truly isn't that good, but they think they're that good because of standings in a weak conference or because they got deeper into the postseason. Great example of this are the Atlanta Hawks a couple of years ago, made the conference finals, made some trades, committed to DeJounte Murray, traded some draft picks in the process, lost a bunch of talent as well, and now we're looking at a team that below 500 and is now looking to blow it up. But that's what happens in the Eastern Conference. You can convince yourself that a mid team is much closer to competing than they actually are, just because of postseason success that is only warranted to you because of the conference that you play in and not necessarily how good you are. Well, on the other hand, you have a team like, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had Paul George and Russell Westbrook on the roster in their relative primes, playing some of the best basketball in their entire careers, and still could not make it past the first round. That level of star power, if it was out east, they would be making deep postseason runs. So I just don't want the Indiana Pacers or even the New York Knicks or even the Cleveland Cavaliers are probably going to convince themselves that they're closer than what they actually are. If we're the Knicks, we'll trade Julius Randle for Paul George and I'll do it. Who's going to tell them? Or the Philadelphia 76ers, all we got to do is we get PG or we go get another wing and we'll be fine. Look, the Eastern Conference is going to continue to stay bad. I don't know what to tell people. Things are just not going to change, but hopefully things do moving forward. But until then, honestly, I don't believe anything that happens in this conference is the reason why a lot of people are being critical. Though they won 64 games, though statistically they are a really great team, and though they are winning games in the postseason by a pretty comfortable margin for the most part, it's still just not enough because we can still watch them play basketball and we can see the problems. And you can get away with a lot of those problems when you play in one of the weakest conferences in NBA history. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you believe that the Eastern Conference is one of the weakest conferences you've ever seen? Do you think I'm overblowing it? Or you think I'm just yapping and chatting? That could be a part of it as well. And if you don't want to leave a comment, make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell. Every single day, I'm streaming playoff games on playback.tv/Lowe's Room. Check me out over there. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.